Uh, so hello and welcome to the Ducati UK headquarters here at Silverstone Race Circuit, where I've just been here today to get to know the new Ducati Monster SP. Just back in from a day's riding on it. Quick history lesson though on the Monster, because I think it is relevant to this bike. About 30 years or so ago, Ducati made up a bit of a bitzer bike that had a frame from an 851 and an engine from an 900 SS, and a few other bits and pieces to make a bike that they call the Monster. And in many ways, it was at a time when it actually became a really important bike to Ducati. At a time when they had a smaller range of bikes. Today, it's a completely different company. It's a different range of bikes. And they kind of kept with that philosophy with the Monster right up till really a couple of years ago when they updated it heavily. And there's dozens of different types of Monsters, from 1200s to 600s, all sorts of varieties that they came up with over the years. But what they did a couple of years ago is they cut them all out and they came out with just one Monster. And they completely redesigned it. So out went the tubular chassis, in came the alloy front frame, as they call it, and they used the little 932cc engine, and it was an absolute beauty. They've changed it dramatically in terms of weight loss and also the geometry. So it kind of went from being a bit of a bitzer bike, which it was for. It kind of carried on that whole philosophy right through till a couple of years ago, where it was kind of made up. It was a bike that was made up of bits of others to become a bike in its own right, and that was it. And that's kind of a reflection really on the way the market's been going as well. Of course, we all know the naked sector is expanding at a rate in all areas, at the cheaper end, and at the sort of super exclusive end, up at the super naked. This is obviously somewhere in between, in that sort of middleweight sector. Which is quite a popular sector occupied by a number of different bikes. When I rode that updated, or not even updated, that brand new Monster a couple of years ago, I thought I'd just go back over the road test that I put into fast bikes a couple of years ago and just sort of refresh myself on what I said. And one paragraph stood out for me, and I'm just going to read it out. I said, on paper, the suspension isn't anything to write home about. The forks are 43mm upside down jobs, without any adjustment, and the rear shock is adjustable for preload only. But it doesn't really matter too much, as the settings that Ducati have put in them are on the money for virtually every scenario that the Monster is assumed to find itself in. Sustained hard use, such as on a track day, would soon find the limits of the suspension, and those underdamped initial movements of the forks and shock that work well on the road would soon become a source of irritation on track. So fast forward to the present day, and we have the Monster SP, which I'm pleased to say has had the suspension heavily updated to some fancy fully adjustable Öhlins gear. So nice to see. Well done, Ducati. Other things include, we've got these fancy Termignoni pipes on there. We've got Brembo calipers. These are the Stylemas, very popular through the sort of upper range of Ducatis. It's got a lithium battery. It's got Pirelli Diablo Rosso 4s instead of Rosso 3s, which are on the base model Monster. It's got a steering damper and a fancy seat cover, which all comes in at $13,995, which is a couple of grand up on the base model Monster. What's it like to ride? Well, if I'm being completely honest, today's been on the surface, you might say today's not been the greatest day. As I speak to you, it's now the middle of February, and it's I think it's got up to about 10 degrees Celsius today. This morning was very, very slippery, ground frost overnight. So conditions were far from ideal, and the sort of conditions you would take this bike out in. But nonetheless, so we were quite limited on being able to really properly give it a good go and chuck it around a bit. But nonetheless, even in those kind of conditions, you can still learn a lot about a bike, and in particular the kind of finer side of what's going on, particularly with the handling and the way the chassis communicates. So it's been interesting nonetheless, and there's been plenty to learn about the bike. And unsurprisingly, The suspension really does stand out as the star of the show, which, as I say, really shouldn't come as a surprise. It's good quality gear. It's come set up again for the road, so rather like the base model, it feels very, very nicely damped. It has that really nice sort of plush quality. What's the word I'm looking for? Kind of you're sort of gliding along, really. The sort of crashiness has gone from the forks, which can sometimes be a little bit over damped. It just works really, really nicely at both ends as well. They work together. Sometimes you can get bikes and manufacturers will set them up where one end is a bit stiffer than the other, or undersprung, or oversprung, or underdamped, and there's a mismatch, and you can pick that up, especially on low grip conditions. Not so today. I think for me, the number one standout feature of this bike was how the suspension has worked in combination front and rear throughout the day. So no surprise there, really. All the other stuff, you know, I don't know. The brakes, steering damper, you know, you really got to be throwing it around a lot harder than we were today. But you know, we've got experience with these calipers on other models, and they're obviously fantastic. So so thumbs up all around. Really, just to wrap things up on the bike, the last thing really to talk about, which cannot be ignored, is its price. As I say, it's coming in at £5 under £14,000, which in that middle sector, that middleweight sector, those sort of premium bikes that occupy that space in that sector, yeah, puts it way, way, way above those in terms of price. And in fact, actually, you're starting to get into the lower end of the super naked sector. There's a couple of bikes in that area with significantly more power and equipment that you can get for the same money. However, the thing to say about that really is, yeah, this is a very high spec bike. The electronics on it are fantastic and the standard within the class. You've got traction control and anti-wheelie, which can be split out, which is it's kind of essential, and there's no excuse not to do it. But there's plenty who don't, and Ducati do, which is a fantastic feature of this bike. It lets you tap into that sort of playful side of it with that little safety net behind you. You know, it's safe in the knowledge that you do have a little bit of a someone watching over you. And the thing about price, really, you know, it's a little bit like how a bike looks. I think, anyway, this is my kind of personal view on it. You know, it'd be very easy to say it's too expensive for the sector, and you can get a lot more bike for your money if you look elsewhere. But I kind of always feel that price it kind of falls under that same umbrella as looks, as in it's very subjective. You know, what I feel might not be good value might be great value to someone else who's a huge fan and loves the look and all that kind of stuff. So I kind of just feel I need to mention it, but I'm reluctant to make it a mark against the bike, because it's like saying this bike looks good or that bike doesn't look good. That's just my own personal opinion. You know, value is like in the eye of the beholder. So the only thing really left to say about this bike is that I've seen enough of it today to really look forward to having another go on it when the summer gets here. Love to have a go on a track on it, and that's it really. Obviously, I'll be writing this all up for the next issue of Fast Bikes magazine, which will be out in about a month's time from now. But since this is a video, that's actually a pointless thing to say because this will still be online in years to come. So overall, yeah, it gets a big thumbs up from me. It's kept all the good stuff that I liked about the base model. It's all still there, that playfulness, the character, the geometry. It's got really quick steering. It's got fantastic quality equipment. It's got great electronics, a great playful little punchy engine that's set up on quite low gearing. So, you know, you can't not have fun on this bike. And with this particular spec bike, they've put the things on it that I noted the base model needed. So, you know, it's kind of like an obvious thing for Ducati to do, but I'm glad they've done it. Well done.